We're joined here, gathered here together today to farewell Vincenzo Enzo. Tesoro, beloved Tesoro, and Shirley, the brother of Mario and Gino in Napoli, Italy. He was a favorite uncle of Italian residents and, of course, in New Zealand as well. Brother-in-law and very much loyal, welcoming, warm friend. I think Enzo would very much approve of our gathering here today. Our flag, the weather is good, the music he loved, and good friends and family. Everybody sharing, special people to him. And so I'll just speak for a minute about the roles he had of recent years. They were passionate roles. Above all, Enzo was a very passionate man. He was passionate about his Italian culture. He was a passionate host. He welcomed strays and was open-armed about having people join him. He was passionate about world issues, very intelligent, well-read, and a deep thinker. There were so many wonderful conversations over his table. The pizza man and cheese. His pizza and cheese and bread were extraordinary. And he was passionate about Shirley. In recent months, he was especially worried about Shirley. But he was assured that we would all be there for her as time goes on. Shirley, would you like to say a few words, and then we'll all have a turn if you wish. And if you could just come here, then it will be picked up well.
I just want to say that Enzo's Italian family will be with us in spirit today, at this time, right now, because they are doing the night vigil, whereas 12 hours later in Italy. And in the spirit of today, we're going to celebrate his life. I have received many emails from the family and translated them into English and then right back in Italian and do a translation, because my Italian, though it's good, it's not fantastic. I love them for what they did, the kind messages they sent me. They were so passionate about how they described their love to me. And they made me feel, once again, even more close to them, even though we're far apart. I appreciate their love, which will sustain me through this difficult period. And I look forward to my return to Napoli to celebrate Enzo and his family sometime soon. And thank you all for coming. And I thank my angels who assisted me today, my sister-in-law who was Florence Nightingale, and my chef and dishwasher, Harriet, who fed me, looked after me, and Helene, who stayed with me overnight when I was alone, one day. And how and you've been so good to arranging all this music for us. And I'd like to thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Shirley. At this point, it would be lovely if those who wish to remember Enzo, recount a tale, an incident, most welcome. If you could just come to this area, Ian.
That sounds like an invitation to start, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Thanks, Harry. Look, I did a bit of reminiscing with Enzo about a month ago, and we talked about how we met and the number of things that occurred during our early years together, and I thought you might find it just interesting to hear from me on that conversation. It all started in 1972, and I was just fresh-faced out of university, and I joined the lab at the factory in Taupo. I'm standing there in the lab finding my way around on day 2, I think it was, and there was this aria burst forth from the walls of the room next door. What could this be? Because I didn't know it was an aria. I didn't know anything about arias. It was just someone singing a lot next door. So I went round to inquire, got round there, looked around. There's a guy, I'd never met him before. He turned around to me and he said, "Are you xenophobic?" And I said, "Of course not." And I had no idea what xenophobic was. I wasn't going to admit that I knew that. So anyway, he understood that I didn't understood. So anyway, that was our first meeting, and then after that, and exactly as Harry said, and as Shirley said, you know, he was pretty adept at bringing strays into the family, and I was one of those many strays that were brought in. And it occurred like this, and he said to me one day in the lab, "You play chess?" And I thought, "Oh, this is my big moment." "Yeah, I play chess, Enzo." Big mistake. Well, it wasn't a mistake, but it was a big mistake from the chess point of view. So I went round to Enzo and Shirley's place that night or a night or two later on, and Shirley was there, and I met Shirley, and she was busy making deep fried pizzas. So we played a game or two of chess, and it became quite apparent after the first and second games that I was completely in another league compared to Enzo. He was so much better than me that you couldn't imagine how much better he was. And that's because he spent all those years on board ships where he was a first officer, playing chess in the late hours of the night or the morning whenever he was off ship. He might have had a glass or two of wine, I suspect, from the bowels of the ship at that time too. Yeah. So Shirley and Enzo became like an elder brother, sister to me for a while there, until Marilyn came along. Well, not better. So I took Marilyn along to get approval to find out if she was going to be a suitable wife. So that turned out okay. So we decided to get married. Well, of course, Enzo and Shirley came along to the wedding, and I'm jumping a few months here. So we had the wedding ceremony in Te Awamutu. Now you've got to remember Te Awamutu, particularly in 1975, was a very small agricultural town with lots of traditional values and thinking. So we had the wedding ceremony, and much to my surprise, guess who pops straight up to the front of the room and gives me a kiss on each of the big cheek. Big kiss on each cheek. Can you imagine all these people saying, "What's going on? You know, who's kissing the groom? You're supposed to kiss the bride." So look, I just thought I'd share that little transition period in my life. Hugely formative for me, and we had a great relationship, Enzo.
Just for Enzo's family, I'm Shirley's brother, and I met Enzo when 12, 13 years old.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, about 12, 13, and at my parents' place in Taupo, and Mum and Dad were so thrilled that Shirley had married Enzo, this naval officer, and you got to be so proud of your brother because when he arrived in New Zealand, hardly a word of English, and he rose to this high position,
Bad.
but very limited on the.
He could say, "I love you."
And he rose to this high position in the forestry industry along with Ian and Hal over here. And believe me, Enzo went through some hard times at that mill when he first started. I met some of the hypocrites that he had to work with, and for him to rise to the position he did, you have to be extremely proud of him. And he was always kind and giving, very generous. I think surely you were very lucky. Wonderful husband, and proud to call him my brother-in-law.
Well, I have a few notes here.
Is it a long story?
It's a very long story. Yeah, so as Keith has said so far, Enzo was a positive and caring individual. And I first came across him when I first started to become a Kiwi 35 years ago. And when we mentioned strays, yes, I was another one. We were as a family of 4 strays from Ireland, and it was really quite an important relationship, because our sons arrived here with no relatives whatsoever apart from a couple of parents that you don't want to be seen with, and then so immediately became the Kiwi uncle, and we asked them for their impressions just over the last couple of days. And Stephen remembers being carried out from dinners at Shirley and Enzo's house, asleep, having gone to sleep in Enzo's bed, and carried out to the car. And I think very often Stephen would have woken up halfway out to the car and realized he was being carried by Enzo. And he also remembered Enzo training Panther the cat. And all it took was Enzo saying, "Settle, settle," as he firmly tapped Panther on the head with a couple of fingers. And the boys really picked up on that. They thought that's a fabulous training technique, you know. And so they carried on using settle, settle for the rest of their lives. Stephen was telling us just a couple of days ago he was saying that to his own son, settle. So, and Byron, he has recollections of the food, the pizza, the pasta, and especially puttanesca. And he didn't have very good handwriting when he came from Ireland, and among his teachers, including Marilyn, he was instructed to get that handwriting up to standard. And so what he did was take the puttanesca recipe from Enzo and he wrote it over and over and over again. And that, thanks to puttanesca, he's now a reasonably decent writer. He also remembers learning to windsurf with Enzo and play tennis. He actually had Enzo come over to his first house in Westmere some years later, and Byron said he wanted to cook something, and what kind of ingredients should he get? He's just going to pop up at the shops. You want some lobster, some steak, or what kind of things do you want? And Enzo said a can of tuna and some anchovies, and that was the makings of his puttanesca. So yeah, a fabulous uncle. And for me, we worked together in Taupo and quite a while in Australia at various locations, and that was always positive. We had a good mix, a complementary mix of talents and strengths. And Enzo was highly respected for his technical ability. Every operation he went to in Australia, people would stand back and watch him do his magic. So that's a relatively small part of life now when you look back, but for that career period it was important. And I guess for me the outstanding memory has been discovering after 30 years of knowing Enzo that he had a peel but didn't have a pizza oven. The peel being necessary to pull the pizza out of the pizza oven, But when we discovered that there was a pizza oven that was required, we got together and built one. And that project was a delight, and the outcome, the results were memorable. He made so many good pizzas there, and yeah, it's my memory of Enzo.
Penguins, Sammy. Tell them the penguin story.
Right, my name's
Uncle Enzo's nephew.
Sam, yeah, Uncle Enzo's nephew. Wasn't always the best nephew. There was a period where Enzo was charged with looking after myself and my two brothers. And I'll never forget the morning I woke up to Uncle Enzo walking into my room, hands raised. Why are there penguins in the bath? And on my way home that evening I had found penguins on the roadside and doorstep and filled up the bathtub and put them in the bath. And Enzo was not impressed. But I'll never forget that. They belong in the ocean. And he swiftly ran and taken out. But yeah, one of the few memories. But I'll definitely miss my Uncle Enzo.
Yeah, right. Well, I've known Enzo that long, or Enzo and Shirley that long. We moved into bought a house in Haruru, just up the road from Enzo. It didn't take long though before again he made contact with us, or Shirley did, and we were there and welcome all the time. Some of the things that I remember of the time, and which carried on and on and on, always an espresso. Arrive at Enzo's place in Shirley's place at any time. Enzo was almost instantly on the machine making an espresso, even if he'd had his own already in the day. The other things that spring to mind, of course, are the pizzas, which were mentioned, the fact that he made his own mozzarella to make sure that he had the genuine article. I remember one day we went kayaking. For a long time he talked about getting out, getting a kayak and doing some work. We had kayaks, and I know Shirley sort of suggested to him that he should try one first, but he went out and bought one, but it was an inflatable kayak, and he said, we tried it a few times down on the beach, and I said, why don't we go up the river to Kerikeri one day? So he said, yeah, all right. So I went up Waipapa. I had my kayak, he pumped his kayak up, but there was something wrong with the back of the where he sat, and he got in there, and it shows the sort of, I don't know whether it's stubbornness maybe, but there was no way it was going to stop him. And you could see by the time we got up to the stone store and started heading back down, and the tide had started coming in and breeze, but no, there was no way Enzo was going to slow down and give up on this one. But he was a little bit stubborn and bit sore, I think, by the time he got back. Shortly after that, he went out and bought himself a proper kayak that he didn't have to blow up, and it wouldn't start going flat on him. Perhaps it's all to do with him returning to the sea again. Politics was an interesting discussion with Enzo. A number of times we'd sit there and talk about things, and it seemed to me that he was sort of quite strongly supportive of the Labour Party, until one day Winston Peters was standing in Northland, and suddenly he said, I'll vote for anybody except Winston Peters. So I think that was the year he changed his vote and voted for the National Party, just to avoid that. Yes, of course, Australia was always mentioned, often mentioned. We'd go down there and I'd end up watching rugby matches with him. And Enzo was, he was a good sort of New Zealand citizen in a way, because he supported the All Blacks. He definitely supported the All Blacks against everybody except when they played Australia. And then he would support the Australians. Whether, of course, that was just to wind me up, which could well be the case. You know, we spent a lot of time with Enzo and Shirley eating pizzas and drinking coffee and wine, etc. And he's a friend that I'm always going to miss. And go well.
Just a few years, I suppose, and everybody said pretty much everything that I would say about the espresso, the pizzas, the cheese. And he said, Enzo, I have the book. I will promise to start making cheese as soon as I get home. But yeah, sailed him on the breeze, mate.
I had to write things down because of what
Just a bit closer to that.
a lot of it has already been said. But the memories will carry on, even though they're very precious. When I think about Enzo, my memories are, well, this has been said, good food, music, walking, and the most important, he was a very good friend. We met Shirley and Enzo when we moved to Harua in 2008, and now it seems like we've always known them. I'll never forget Enzo knocking on our door shortly after we moved there, giving us the mozzarella, which was very nice. He was amazing at making bread and pizza. Here comes the pizza here. Okay. The times we had together when he made pizza for us and other friends were very special. I can picture him in front of a pizza oven and being based. Quite a Mediterranean style setting, as you know. I remember him sitting down with a wine, singing or humming some Italian songs. And when we went to their place, there was always the background music of arias and classical music. Enzo went for a walk on the waterfront in Pahia every morning when we lived in Harua. Sometimes I would run into him and he would call out, "Ciao, Elena," from a distance of ciao. Really nice. Just after the day after Enzo passed away, an eerie thing happened. John and I were on our boat getting ready to go home. Shirley had phoned me the day before to say Enzo had passed away. I had a quick walk before leaving the island. I was thinking about Enzo and Shirley. When I returned to our boat, there was this new yacht anchored right next to us with the name Vincenzo, which was absolutely amazing. I want to say goodbye to Enzo. Arrivederci, we love you.
Thank you.
And here's the picture of the yacht. There's a brand new yacht sort of come out of the blue. Oh, sorry. What the camera's there. So this is the yacht appearing out of nowhere, brand new, with the name Vincenzo on it.
I'm Jenny, I'm Enzo's sister-in-law, and like everyone else I remember the pizza and the pasta and the coffees and the red wine with Enzo. One of the big mistakes I made one day was asking for a cappuccino, and it was after midday. So I was probably told that no, I couldn't have one of those because it was after 12. So since that time, which was years and years ago, whenever I feel like a cappuccino and it's after 12, it was always, sorry Enzo, but I still drink my cappuccino and apologise that I was having it after 12. In the last few days, I was lucky enough to be able to help Shirley take care of Enzo at home. So that was a privilege for me to be able to do that, and I'll miss him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, wait, there's more. If you don't mind. Look, there's another part to our lives with Enzo, and we have talked today about his life here in New Zealand. But there was his life in Italy. Of course, only Shirley knows his life in Italy. but Marilyn and I had the privilege of going over to Napoli some years ago to meet his family. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about that trip, because it was just quintessentially Italian. And we stayed in Via Tribunale and rented there for a while and set about meeting all the relatives. Now, first of all, I should say that Gino came along to the airport, and Gino came in a Fiat, and the Fiat is about 3 feet long, and we had 2 big bags, and Enzo and Marilyn and I and Gino, and somehow we had to get from the airport to Via Tribunale, which was a challenge, but we made it. So that was just one part of the colour of arriving in Napoli. Then we went off to visit with Mario and his wife, and we were picked up by Mario, and Mario is a particularly eccentric character. So we're driving along the streets. Mario uses one hand occasionally and no hands most of the time, and he was laughing his head off the whole way and pointing at Enzo because Enzo was wearing shorts. Now, everybody knows in Italy, when you're going out to lunch, you wear long trousers. And this went on and on all the way till we get to Mario's place, where we had yet another one of those magnificent Italian meals. And then it came time to go and visit with his elder sister, and Julia. And we had dinner with some... Cousin, but like an elder sister. And we went there and had yet another magnificent meal, and I can just remember someone drove us home. We were sitting in the car singing Italian songs, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's one I actually learned as a child, and driving around crazy all around those streets and arriving back safely as usual, as you do there, into our homes. Then we had the big trip to Ravello to go on holiday. And that was in convoy. It could only be in convoy, Italian style, couldn't it? You couldn't go in one car and so on. So we proceeded to go all the way from Naples to the south to Ravello. And of course, no one knew exactly the address that we were going to. It was a bit of a mystery. And so stop on the side of the road, ask people, and they kept pointing down the hill. And we go further down the hill, pointed. So we had to do a bit of sightseeing, and we'd wait to find some more information about where we were going. And they kept pointing to Ravello. We knew Ravello was at the top of the hill, but we were pointing to the bottom of the hill. And so we go down there, this magnificent unit that we had hired, and we had the most wonderful holiday there, Italian style, just going to Amalfi, Vietri sul Mare, and all the villages up and down around there. And that's just a little snapshot for me of just wonderful times that we had. Come on, mate.
Thank you all very much. Enzo would take great delight in these stories. I just ditto what Ian said. When Hal and I were in Italy and went to Naples, we had the opportunity of seeing where he grew up. Enzo was so alive. He was so proud. It gave us a view of Italy. We were in Rome with him as well, in Shirley, and helped. They made Rome come alive, and certainly Naples was a different place because we were with Enzo and Shirley.
Point of interruption. Rome came alive, but it was never as good as Napoli.
Oh, true. Sorry. Roma is not as good as Napoli. Everybody knows that. And just one additional memory I have of how inclusive he was. We had various holidays with Shirley and Enzo around New Zealand, and my mum would come from Canada, and she thought Enzo was God's gift on earth.
He was.
He was. He was so charming, so welcoming, so warm with my mum. So thank you, Enzo, for that. And at this stage, we'll have a closure. The world will not be as good now, quite as good. Enzo has left us. I think we have some peace knowing he will not suffer as he has in the past couple months. He will be remembered, the passionate man, the wonderful husband, and many more roles he played. Go well, our friend. And thank you for being such an important part of our lives.
And then